You're listening to English with Monty, the podcast about the English language. Today is 8-Minute English, talking about the use of reflexive pronouns. Hello there and welcome to 8-Minute English. I've got Gideon on the show and we're going to talk about reflexive pronouns. Hi, Gideon.
Hello. Why do you need me? I thought you could do it yourself.
Wow. That's a good starting point. You're using yourself. That is a reflexive pronoun. Why are you using it? How can I do it myself? That'd be ridiculous.
Well, I used it for emphasis there.
Yes, you did, didn't
No,
you?
I didn't. No, I didn't. It's a reflexive pronoun. Do something yourself.
Yes. So why is it called a reflexive pronoun and why have you put it in there?
Well, you use reflexive pronouns to things that you do to yourself. I do it to myself. You do it to yourself. He does it to himself. She does it to herself. And we'll look at some examples. It'll be easier, isn't it? So one that you often hear is, I'm going to wash myself. No one else is going to do it for me. I wash myself. Maybe you can think of another example. And something bad could happen. He shot himself. Okay, nobody else shot him. He did it himself. It was self-inflicted.
Yeah, I cut myself.
I cut myself. What else?
I hope you enjoy yourself.
Exactly. Enjoy is a reflexive verb. So there are a number of verbs which we use reflexively. Joy is a good example because often my students don't use it reflexively. They say, I really enjoyed. So when I enjoyed myself, it's usually reflexive, isn't it?
So you could obviously say, I really enjoyed the concert. Whereas,
you enjoyed something.
Yes.
But you don't say, I really enjoyed.
No, you have to say, I really enjoyed myself. That's correct. Yeah. That's a good point.
And if you're self-taught, so how did you learn to play the drums?
By myself.
Or you use a verb. I taught myself.
I taught myself. Yeah,
that's what you wanted, wasn't it? Yeah. Spanish or whatever. I didn't take any lessons. I taught myself. To teach could be reflexive, or maybe not. I taught you.
Yes, but I suppose if you're using it in a reflexive sense, it's really focusing on myself, isn't it? In that context, it's very difficult to say, you can't say something like, I teach yourself. I mean, it doesn't apply to another person, does it? Because obviously there's no reflex in there.
No, you taught yourself.
No,
exactly. I think in English, in some verbs are not reflexive, whereas in other languages they are, because in English sometimes we'd use get instead of a reflexive verb. I get dressed rather than the more old-fashioned I dress myself.
Yes, that's true, isn't it?
Or I'm going to have a shower. Another one you can use have instead of reflexive. Instead, I'm going to shower myself.
That's an interesting one, isn't it? Because I suppose nowadays that sounds a bit too formal, doesn't it? If you say that.
I think old-fashioned, it's not wrong, is it? Dress myself, that's perfectly okay. But it does sound a bit old-fashioned.
It does, doesn't it? Yeah.
Get dressed now.
You should get dressed, wouldn't you?
Even wash. I used washed in the beginning and would get washed. And wash myself.
That's true.
Both are used, but I think maybe the get form is more common.
And I suppose as well, we can obviously talk about it in the third person, can't we? Your microphone isn't working properly. It turns itself off for no reason.
Oh, yeah, exactly. For things as well. My computer turns itself off. If I don't touch it, my computer turns itself off after, 15 minutes.
There's no other way of saying that, really, is it? You have to use reflexive in that context, don't you?
Exactly.
And then I suppose, obviously, you've got to use it in the plural if you're using ourselves, yourselves, themselves, and then you've got to change it from being an F at the end to a VES. So the spelling is quite different, isn't it? And I suppose also you pronounce it differently, really, don't you?
Yes, themselves, indeed. And also, it's interesting that the second person pronoun, it doesn't have a plural form. You is for singular and you is plural, but in reflexive it does. Yourself, yourselves. You did it yourself. You did it yourself. No, is that wrong? Have I got it wrong? No, that's right, isn't it?
That is right. Yeah,
that is correct.
You have a plural idea as well. Yes. I guess you've got adding emphasis, which is what you were talking about at the beginning. He injured his hand, so he couldn't wash himself very easily.
Yeah.
That's talking about something that's unusual or different in that context.
There's one other way you can use reflexives, and that's just for kind of emphasis.
Mhm.
Who made this cake? I made it myself, not anybody else.
So I guess they're both emphasis, aren't they? But that emphasis that you're giving there is
I
kind of
made this cake
personal.
would just be a fact, but
Yeah,
trying to stress the fact you and not another person, you can add.
exactly. So it's personal. It's not anybody else, is it?
Please do it yourself. Don't ask somebody else to do it for you.
But also, I guess as well, you can add emphasis when you have a noun. So you could put it next to the noun. We talked to the manager herself, and she agreed to give us a refund.
It could have been a number of people, but it was the manager. We talked to the president himself.
Hmm.
Can you believe that? We phoned up and the president answered. So we spoke to the president himself. That stresses the person as something perhaps surprising and unexpected.
Definitely. We spoke about it briefly earlier. If you talk about by and then a reflexive pronoun, that means alone, doesn't it, really? I could say, do you enjoy being by yourself?
Exactly.
Oh,
I did
yeah.
it by myself without any
Hmm.
help. On my own would be a very close synonym.
On my own is very similar to that, isn't it?
Yeah.
And also, I suppose as well, you could use it reciprocally, couldn't you? Which kind of applies to each other or one another. They're buying themselves a new radio.
I think people confuse with each other. And I think that's one of the confusion points, isn't it? Difference between each other and ourselves.
How would you use each other instead of
So each
ourselves?
other's reciprocal. We wrote each other letters, emails, whatever. So not we wrote ourselves emails. If you wrote ourselves emails, I wrote myself an email, you wrote yourself an email, which would be pretty pointless.
You would,
Idea of an exchange.
it is, isn't it? Because if you say, I wrote myself an email, it's like to myself, isn't it? I'm receiving it. So it doesn't
Yeah.
make sense. But if we write it to each other. I write one to you and you write one to me.
Yeah.
Was there anything else you think we need to cover there? I think that covers everything, doesn't it?
Well, we
More or
covered a
less.
lot. I'm sure we've
We,
forgotten something, John, but
we,
that's
we,
okay. Some
that's
more to
okay.
discover. We'll have to do another episode on it, so it's fine.
Hopefully not. I think we've covered most things. Thanks for joining me, Gideon.
My pleasure.
You've been listening to 8 Minute English.